Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Steps Together, the Steps for Development podcast, providing you with practical support for nurturing children's growth and development. I'm your host, Deb Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to introduce myself, share a little bit about how Steps for Development came to be, and tell you why I believe that this unique approach will empower you for change that lasts when it comes to raising, working with, and supporting children with diverse needs. I'm going to dive right in and tell you a little bit about my background. I want you to know that I have professional experience to share with you, but I've also got personal experience. My journey as a parent has paralleled my journey as an occupational therapist. I started parenting 45 years ago, and it was only after I became a parent that I went to OT school. And I have to say that those two things have just been intertwined. Things I've learned as a parent, things I've experienced as a parent have pushed and guided me into what I was interested in as an occupational therapist. What I was learning as an occupational therapist shaped how I was parenting. And so it's just really been this journey of growth, both professional and personal. I don't think that my personal journey is any different than yours. I've experienced complexities in my own life, um, whether that be childhood trauma, right? The dynamics of dysfunctional families, um, the challenges of children with unique needs. All those things as a parent have absolutely shaped me and guided me in my interest in working with children. So, as an OT, I've pursued a lot of interests because of my own children. Thank you. Shout out to my kids if you're listening. um, and I hope that the things that I've learned as an OT have, in fact, helped me grow as a parent, helped me be better, if you will. I'm a big fan of that quote from Maya Angelou. You know, when you do the best you can with what you've got, and when you know better, you do better. So I hope that through all these years as a parent, I have been evolving and growing. And I know that I have been through a tremendous amount of personal growth and change over the course of my life, um, in addition to professional growth as well. I reached a point in my professional career 15 years ago where I decided I was done doing therapy with everybody and I just wanted to focus on kids. Pediatric care is what pulled me into occupational therapy. And, after 20 years as an OT and working in a wide variety of settings, um, always working with children, but not exclusively with children, I decided in 2010 that that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to focus on kids, just wanted to work in pediatrics. So it led to me opening my own pediatric therapy clinic, Steps for Kids, in Yorkville. And um, and I started just thinking it would be me, just doing my OT thing. But we have since grown into this amazing clinic where we do OT, PT, and speech. Um, and we practice from a very family centered, holistic approach because, I started my pediatric practice because I wanted to do it my way. And I felt very strongly that pediatric treatment should not be done in isolation with the child. I'm not fixing the child, I'm helping the child to be successful. I'm helping the child in their growth and their development. And the only way that's going to happen is by connecting with the parents and educating the parents and making sure that as an OT, I'm looking at the whole picture. Um, so that's very much where the foundations of our approach at Steps for Kids comes from. This focus on holistic care, family centered, very play based, and developmentally appropriate. Now, back in 2010, up through about 2015, it was really, really common for me to be getting referrals for children who had sensory integration dysfunction or sensory processing disorder. And, that's an area of expertise as occupational therapists. Many of us specialize in that area. I myself am certified in sensory integration assessment and treatment. And it was quite a big thing back then. Um, and what we started to get by about 2015 was a lot of question from parents about, is this sensory or is this behavior? And the question was really perplexing because to me, it didn't make a lot of sense. It's always behavior, right? Everything that kids are doing, everything we're all doing is behavior. But the question that the parents were asking was, is this sensory based? And as we saw a rise around 2015, somewhere in that range, 2015, 16, 17, we were really seeing this increase in referrals to OT for children who had behavioral problems, behavioral concerns. The parents were reporting difficulty with self-regulation, extreme outbursts, meltdowns became a buzzword. These children just seemed overwhelmed, and the parents were really, really struggling. These were not just tantrums. This was much, much more. So parents, of course, right, people, we look for solutions. Parents were looking for solutions. Parents wanted answers. Why is my kid acting this way? And I would do an assessment, and sometimes we uncovered some real skill deficits. We uncovered areas where the child was really struggling. And back then, I became a big fan of Ross Greene. Dr. Greene wrote a book called The Explosive Child. And his approach is that kids do well when they can, that if they have the skills, they can succeed. And that really resonates with me as an occupational therapist because we're all about teaching skills. And so that's what I started focusing on back then, was this idea that children just need to learn the skills that they need in order to be successful. What I discovered as I progressed in therapy as a private practitioner was that the parents also needed to develop their skills. I was developing my own skills as a parent at the time, parenting a couple of children who had some intensities and some strong emotions and strong will. So, you know what that's like, having a strong-willed child. And I was trying to navigate like some, I guess, new situations, things I hadn't encountered as a parent before. And I found that the parents I was working with were facing some of the same things. So as I learned things to help myself as a parent, I was at the same time incorporating those into my practice as an OT. And so I started looking at relationships and communication and understanding what was driving children's behaviors. Was it a skill problem? Was it anxiety? Was it trauma? Was it these limbic system responses? What was underlying it? And what I found was that gave me some tools for problem solving. I could start analyzing a situation and I could say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What are we trying to get done? What are we trying to accomplish? And are we on different pages? Am I, as a parent, not on the same page as my child? Is my child just focused on playing and doesn't want to do their chores? Where is this parent and this child that I'm working with? Why aren't they seeing eye to eye? And how can I make that better? And at the same time, in 2016, I started teaching professional continuing education. And I was tasked to teach a course about sensory-based behaviors. That was what the company that I was working with wanted me to teach. So They say that teaching is the best way to learn, right? And nothing could be more true for me because teaching that workshop, taking the knowledge I had about sensory processing and diving into what is my role as an OT with behavior? How do I educate and help parents? It just all kind of came together. I don't want to call it a perfect storm because it wasn't a storm in the bad sense. I guess it was just a perfect confluence. Maybe that's the word, right? Just the perfect blending and the perfect timing that I was going through a stage in my own parenting that paralleled what the parents I was working with were going through, and that I was being pushed to learn, what do I do with this behavior? And what do I teach other professionals for how to work with this behavior? So that's where Steps for Development came from. It came out of this need to sort of crystallize what it was that I was doing in OT to help parents who were struggling with these challenging behaviors. And what I found was that my training as an occupational therapist, which is focused on identifying a task, solving a problem, finding solutions. How do we do this successfully? How does this person navigate this challenge with the skill set they have? Do they need to improve their skills? Do they need to learn something new? Do they need some sort of accommodation? Do they need to shift their mindset? Do they need to um, take care of themselves? Self-care, mental health? Like what is it that we need to do? I harnessed that skill set as an occupational therapist, and I harnessed my own personal belief that we just really need to be practical, right? Um, and that I say I'm an inherently lazy occupational therapist. I don't like complex systems. I want to keep it simple. I want to try to get to the outcome as quickly as possible without a whole lot of bells and whistles, right? I don't like to spend hours at the printer and the laminator and making all kinds of resources and all that kind of stuff. I just want to get it done. And that's where Steps for Development came to be. That's where a few years ago it just really crystallized for me. This is what in OT we call clinical reasoning. It's this process of problem solving, identifying what is the task, what is the thing we're trying to get done, and then analyzing what do we need in order to get this done. And then we just prioritize. Where do we start? Sometimes it's trial and error, it's hit and miss. Oops, that didn't work. Let's go back and try again. And what I found is that it works if we take this problem solving approach. So here's what Steps for Development is all about. It is focused on practical solutions. It's focused on what do we need to do right now, in this moment, in the next day, in the next week, that's going to make life better for you and your child? What is it that's most problematic? Where are we going to get the most bang for the buck, right? What can we change? Not a year from now, but right now. I help parents to see their child's strengths and their challenges, to better understand where is this kid coming from. And that builds the relationship between parent and child. As parents, we're already the experts on our children. But when parents come to OT with challenging behaviors and kids that are having difficulty with regulation, kids that aren't listening, they're not following directions, they're not behaving the way the parents want them to behave, these parents do not feel like the expert, right? You might be listening to this now thinking, I'm not the expert on my child. I am so confused right now. I don't know what to do with this kid. I want to reassure you, you actually do know, you just can't see it. And that's where I can come in. I can help you see the strengths. You can see where your child is struggling, and you can problem solve for how to help that child do better. Your child just needs you. That's the secret ingredient. They just need you. They need you to connect, to empathize, to see it from their perspective. They need you to help problem solve so that we can together find the strategy, the technique, the tool, the mindset shift that's going to make things different, that's going to effect some change, a shift. Now, it's important to know that the Steps for Development approach does not teach you a specific strategy. I always say there are infinite strategies that could work for helping regulate a child. There's infinite strategies that will help you get a kid's attention or help a child follow a set of directions. The important piece is that we are not looking for a one-size-fits-all solution. I'm not going to tell you, do this exercise with your child and your child's problems will go away, because I don't know if that's the case. Maybe this exercise will help. Maybe for your child it won't. Maybe your child needs something different. And that's why we focus on problem solving. In the Steps for Development approach, I teach adults how to problem solve, how to think like a therapist, if you will, how to think like I do when it comes to knowing their child, investigating the behavior, deciding on a plan, and supporting for success. That's the secret sauce. That's all it is. Know your child, investigate the behavior, decide on the right plan or any plan to give it a shot, and then support that child for success with whatever it takes, strategies, techniques, changing things around. When you do that, when you learn how to problem solve, you now become an empowered adult. You've learned a skill, and it's a skill that's going to help your child forever. It doesn't matter what their skill deficit is. You now have the skill to problem solve for your own child. And that's the piece that I want you to understand. When we do our problem solving, it's important to know how important you are in the equation. The first thing I always teach is a mindset shift. And if you've been following Steps for Development on social media, or if you signed up for our newsletter, you've already gotten some information. Maybe you attended the webinar that I hosted a little while ago. And I talk a lot in there about how important your behavior is, your self-regulation, your ability to co-regulate with the child, your ability to communicate effectively. Those things, those are the things that are so very, very important. So, you know, my husband once said to me with one of our kids, "Why do you escalate right along with him?" This was years ago. It was probably about 15 years ago, right at the beginning of this journey for me. And I was really taken aback. You know, he said, "Why do you do this? Why do you escalate when he escalates?" And initially I got very defensive. I was like, "I don't do that. I don't escalate. I'm an in control parent." And when I sat back and really thought about it, he was right. And I don't like to admit that, but he was right. I was escalating right along with my child, and it wasn't helping my child at all. And I was escalating because of my own anxieties, because of my my own feelings of incompetency or my own confusion, right? Like my son was struggling with things that I didn't understand as his parent, and I didn't understand it as an OT. I've come a long, long way. And again, to my kids, if you're listening, thank you. Because the kids that I've parented and the kids that I've worked with, you guys have been the best teachers ever. So I use those experiences, my own personal experiences, to help the kids that are coming into the clinic. And I use it to help you as a parent, so that you can know you're not alone in this. And I get it. I know why you're anxious when the kid's making you late for an appointment. I know why you're trying to rush them out the door so they're not late for school. I get it when you're embarrassed because they're having a meltdown in the middle of Home Depot. I totally get it. And I totally understand the importance of changing the adult in order to change the child. Um, yeah, and that I think is the bottom line. So when you learn to look at yourself and you learn to look at your own behavior, your own mindset about your kids' behavior, you're going to not learn one tool that works. You're going to learn how to problem solve and use lots of tools. You're going to learn how to build your toolkit. You're going to have this huge, huge garage full of tools that you can use with your child. And you're going to see the patterns and you're going to realize that you don't have to fix your child at all. You just have to change what you're doing. You just have to shift your mindset. You need to learn to control what you can control, which is yourself and your responses to the behavior, which, by the way, behavior is nothing more than a response to a stimulus. And anytime you're interacting with somebody, there's this dynamic of I'm the stimulus to your response, and you're the stimulus to my response. So I always have to stop and think, what kind of stimulus do I want to give this child right now? Do I want to give them a stimulus that's going to push them over the edge? It's going to cause more problems? Or do I want to give them a stimulus that's going to help them and help them calm down, help them connect with me, help them understand what's happening? Maybe it's just help soothe them, right? Just help them find that calm. So those are things that you can learn by sticking around and joining Steps for Development moving forward. So I want to close by sharing, kind of summing up 4 things that I have learned in my parenting and professional journey. So 4 things that I've learned. First of all, mindset shift and your own growth really make a difference. They're really the foundation of changing the world around you. It's you first. The second thing that I've learned is that you got to stop fixing your kids or anybody in your life and start looking for their strengths. Start looking for the successes and the joy and build the relationships in a positive way. And the third thing is that it's most important to have this overarching ability to problem solve, not just to build a toolkit, because sometimes it's hard to know what tool you need to use, right? But you need to be able to problem solve. What's going on right now? Do I need the hammer or do I need the plumber's wrench? Do I need the cushioned mallet instead of the tack hammer? I mean, like, what do I need here? You know, do I need the chamois cloth? Something super soft? That's problem solving, learning which tool to use. So, you know, going beyond just collecting tools, this is problem solving. And the last thing that I want to tell you that I've learned in this journey as a parent and as a professional is that you don't have to do this alone. I have not done this alone. I had support from the time I was 18 and came, all the way through to now, right? Like my entire life in parenting, right? Being a young teen parent, being a single parent, going through, school, blending a family, all the things. I mean, I did not do any of this alone. I haven't grown my clinic alone. I haven't created Steps for Development alone, right? You do it together because as a human species, we are social beings and we need each other. So Steps for Development is here for support, right? It's me. I'm here for you. I'm Steps for Development. And it's my passion to help other adults who are trying desperately to help the kids they love. So whether you're a parent, a grandparent, a family member, an educator, a child care worker, a clinical therapist, maybe in either physical or behavioral health. It doesn't really matter what role you have with a child. I think there's things I can offer you that would be helpful. So I hope you're going to stick around. I'm planning on dropping weekly podcasts with tips and strategies and words of encouragement and hopefully some inspiration for you. I've got some live coaching calls that I'm going to make available soon. I'm working on an online course, 3 simple steps to self-regulation, that should be dropping within the next, I'm going to say maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And then I have this vision for growing a community, and I'd really love your feedback on this. I would really like to create a community where we can all come together as adults to support each other, right? To connect, to commiserate, maybe to rant and vent now and then, but mostly for us as the adults to learn and grow, to grow our own skills so that we can help the kids that we love thrive. Because at the end of the day, that's really what matters the most, right? We just want to help our kids. So thank you for joining me today. And I hope that maybe what I've said has resonated with you. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you. You can drop me an email. My email is Debra, DEBRA, at stepsfordevelopment.com. And yeah, I hope we can connect and that you'll stick around. And I would just love to share this journey with you. Thanks for joining me with Steps Together.